When Chinese authorities clamp down on what they see as unwanted or illegal activities, they not only make arrests, they pressure the accused to confess on television. Lawyers, book publishers, activists, they've all been paraded on state media, often before any formal conviction. I'm Steve Chow. On this episode, 101 East investigates China's public confessions. Are they real or just for show?
I have hurt the feelings of the Chinese people. I apologize sincerely for this, and I'm very sorry that this ever happened.
Displays of contrition.
我要承担我自己的责任，我也愿意接受任何处罚。
Admissions of guilt.
危害了国家的利益，我这一点做的是非常错误的。
Televised to audiences of hundreds of millions of people across China and beyond. Since at least 2013, Chinese authorities have subjected dozens of alleged lawbreakers to this kind of treatment. The televised confessions are regularly presented as interviews and embedded in news programs.
Gui Minhai fled the country in 2004.
Some reports, like this one featuring Swedish citizen Gui Minhai, are also repackaged for audiences outside China.
I got quite a clear sense that he had been tortured, for example, when he was detained.
It's a serious allegation. But Gui's business associate Lam Wing-Ki says he too confessed under duress.
你又冇可能見到律師，冇可能見到你屋企人，冇可能同外邊溝通。既然知道佢係用種種非法嘅手段都可以去做嘅話，你唔合作唔得㗎。
They put me in this chair, they locked me in it, they locked the cage, and there are all these camera lenses poking through the bars of this cage.
I have myself been made a star on Chinese television against my will. Besides myself and Mr. Humphrey, I represent the organization.
Corporate investigator Peter Humphrey and activist Peter Darlin have since been released. They're now turning the spotlight back onto the platforms that aired their confessions, accusing Chinese state media of human rights violations.
The media are not just innocent bystanders forced to broadcast these things. They help make them. They help produce them. They help extract them.
It's no secret China has ambitious plans to extend the global reach of its state-owned TV network. But there are now growing calls for the international community to hold its journalism to international standards.
Actually, they are not media. They are a part of Communist Party's propaganda.
一黨專政一日存在，中國唔會有真正嘅民主。
Lam Wing-Ki never intended to be an activist. But these days he's a regular at pro-democracy protests in Hong Kong and an outspoken critic of the Chinese regime. Up until 2015, though, Lam led a quiet life, managing this bookstore on a busy street in Hong Kong. It served a niche market. Customers came looking for gossipy political books banned in mainland China. But then, one after another, Lam and 4 men linked to the bookstore mysteriously disappeared. Lam says his ordeal started when he went to visit his girlfriend in mainland China.
咁過關嘅時候就俾深圳海關截住，帶去一個深圳派出所，然後審問啦，就派2個人。審問完之後，第二朝戴手銬啦，蒙眼戴帽就送我上火車，13、14個鐘頭之後去到寧波，然後轉一個拘留地方。
Back in Hong Kong, speculation grew that the booksellers had been kidnapped and were being held in mainland China. Thousands of people took to the streets demanding answers. Inside his cell in mainland China, cut off from the outside world, Lam had no idea what was happening in Hong Kong.
书店经营期间，店长林荣基主要负责。
He didn't realize he'd appeared alongside 3 of his bookstore colleagues in a report produced by Hong Kong-based Phoenix Television. In it, the men confessed to smuggling banned books into mainland China.
我已经向他认识到自己的错误，愿意接受处罚。
For months, no one outside mainland China knew what had happened to Lam. Then, in June 2016, he reappeared in Hong Kong. Chinese police had ordered him to return to the city to retrieve a hard drive containing information on his bookstore's customers. He used the opportunity to access the internet, and what he read affected him deeply.
有香港人上街抗議6000幾個，而且唔係一次喎。我覺得如果你香港人家去支持你，而你成間書店冇一個人去做一個回應咧，我覺得係會令香港人相當失望。
Instead of returning to the mainland, Lam called a press conference where he spoke about his disappearance and TV confession.
係我要寫全佢書裏邊抽出嚟有一部分，佢唔滿意嘅增添或者刪減，咁樣要我記住。喺視頻嘅時候就叫本書多連翻出嚟。
Beijing's response was swift. China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs issued this rebuttal a day later.
林荣基是中国的公民，他在中国的内地违反了中国的法律，中国的有关部门当然是有权依法进行处理的。
We've come to Berlin to meet another accidental activist. For the past 3 years, Angela Gui has worked on a difficult, oftentimes exhausting campaign to compel Chinese authorities to free her father. Lam's fellow bookseller, Gui Minhai, a Swedish citizen originally from China.
I do think it makes a lot of sense for me to continue my advocacy here, as my father is a German permanent resident. He has family here. And he's lived here for many years. He owns property here.
Gui disappeared from another of his overseas properties on October the 17th, 2015. Closed-circuit TV footage shows him returning to his condominium in the Thai resort town of Pattaya. A man appears to be waiting for him. Gui then unloads his car before driving off again, marking the start of a bizarre saga that is still unfolding.
近日，香港和国外的一些媒体不断报道香港铜锣湾书店老板桂民海所谓失踪的消息。
In January 2016, Gui appeared on Chinese state broadcaster CCTV. The report said he'd returned to China to turn himself in for allegedly killing a pedestrian while driving under the influence of alcohol 13 years ago.
这里我要向受害者家属表示我最诚挚的道歉，对不起。我知道我对他们造成的伤害那是和痛苦，那是没法弥补的。但是呢，我会尽我的有生之年来赎罪。
His daughter Angela spoke to 101 East shortly after Gui's first confession aired. Back then, for security reasons, we agreed not to show her face. We asked how she felt about her father's TV appearance.
I couldn't watch the whole thing because it was too emotionally overwhelming for me. But clearly, the bit that I saw seemed very scripted.
In October 2017, 2 years after Gui disappeared from Thailand, China's foreign ministry announced that he was a free man.
桂民海因交通肇事罪被判处的2年有期刑罚已经执行完毕，已经于2017年10月17日释放。中方已经及时地将情况 通报了瑞典驻华使馆。
But 3 months later, the bookseller was in the news again. He'd been seized by plainclothes Chinese agents while on a train from Shanghai to Beijing. With him were 2 Swedish officials. Angela, who had been allowed regular Skype calls with her father in the months following his so-called release, says she now believes the Chinese government never meant to free him.
I got quite a clear sense that he had been tortured, for example, when he was detained. And he also did tell me that they did not, or the people, his friends, as it were, did not want him to leave China. He showed me a particular set of photographs taken of him sort of smiling and sort of doing the peace sign with his fingers on it on some sort of a Segway in a park. You know, and he told me that was taken by his friends, and the tone of voice in which he said that made it rather quite clear who these friends were, and I think that the setting of the image also very sort of heavily suggests that the image was produced as kind of evidence that he was having a good time.
He turned himself in to police in China.
Nearly 3 weeks after being seized from the train, Gui resurfaced, smiling and in seemingly good spirits as he took part in an alleged interview arranged by China's Ministry of Public Security. Chinese state media were invited to the event. Hong Kong's South China Morning Post, or SCMP, was also present at the so-called interview and released this video.
I think the SCMP handled this whole situation appallingly badly, and they continue to do so, I believe. They still haven't owned up to what they did, which was to uncritically participate in the circulation of propaganda.
In an email to the newspaper's editor-in-chief, Angela wrote, "The interview, a scripted point-by-point rebuttal of the criticism against China's treatment of my father, might as well have been a statement from the Foreign Ministry. You still decided to run the story, knowing these could not possibly be my father's own words. Why?" Editor-in-chief Tammy Tam replied to Angela, saying, "With regard to your father's case, I assure you categorically that we did not collaborate with the Chinese authorities to portray your father as speaking freely while in custody." The South China Morning Post declined our request for an interview, but in a statement said it was staunchly independent. "We had to choose between meeting Gui in a stage-managed setting," it said, "or having no access to him at all, and we made the decision to proceed based on news merit." Peter Darlin never wanted to be a prominent activist. For years, he kept a low profile, quietly working at the Beijing-based legal aid NGO he co-founded with Chinese lawyer Wang Chunjiang. But in the summer of 2015, authorities took Wang as part of what is now known as the 709 crackdown on lawyers and human rights activists. And then, 5 months later, they came for Darlin.
It was a massive operation. 15 to 20 state security officials that sort of came to my home in the evening, cameras rolling, lights on, and it was state security, not the police.
I have caused harm to the Chinese government. I have hurt the feelings of the Chinese people. I apologize sincerely for this.
While in detention, Darlin realized the only way out was to agree to a taped confession. He relented after spending days being watched around the clock by guards and enduring long interrogation sessions.
It was surreal. We literally had a scriptwriter. We had, the camera people, we had a director, then me and her, the CCTV journalist, as 2 actors, and literally just reading the line like a rehearsal, except you don't see the papers. Since
his deportation, Darlin has lived in Chiang Mai, Thailand. he's now preparing to leave Asia for good. We film only indoors, mindful that Gui Minhai disappeared while holidaying in this country, and of the fact that Darlin is still recovering from his ordeal.
I had pretty intense sort of PTSD-related symptoms to deal with when I first relocated here. Like my girlfriend disappears in the supermarket to go get something without telling me, and you'll have a minor freak out standing in the aisle, like what's going on.
In late December, scuffles break out outside a courthouse in the northern Chinese city of Tianjin as Darlin's former co-founder Wang Chunzhang's trial gets underway. He's been held without access to his family or lawyers for more than 3 years. The court hands him a 4.5-year sentence for subversion.
He is one of the few people that have refused to make a forced TV confession. He will choose to be tortured to death before submitting to something that he knows isn't wrong, like making a forced TV confession, admitting some kind of crime that he doesn't consider a crime.
Others swept up in the 709 crackdown appear to have buckled under pressure, though. In August 2016, one of China's most celebrated human rights lawyers appeared in at least 2 separate TV reports. Wang Yu said she was rejecting an award conferred on her by the American Bar Association.
他这种颁奖还是在利用我，抹黑中国政府和抹黑中国形象。
Wang Yu has since made clear she agreed to the so-called interviews for the sake of her son. The teenager was attempting to flee China when he was stopped at a border town in Myanmar. His father, Bao Longjun, says Chinese authorities used him as a bargaining chip.
还说，你不认罪，以后怎么能出去见到你儿子呢？甚至还跟王宇说过。 说你儿子满嘴的民主法治思想，你不好，你教育不了，我们来教育，这些话。
But what exactly is the aim of such confessions? Activist and academic Dr. Tang Biao believes that beyond intimidation and humiliation, they serve another purpose.
If I write down the promise, I read it in front of the camera, I lose face, and I would be criticized by other human rights activists, and I may lose my courage to continue my work.
Tang knows what it's like to butt heads with the Chinese government.
对，我觉得
He was once a human rights lawyer who took on some of China's most high-profile causes and legal cases. Tang was detained multiple times and now lives in exile in the United States. He says he too was filmed making a confession, but the footage never aired.
They kidnapped me and tortured me and forced me to confess. If they aired the video on CCTV or other official television, I would be humiliated very much, but they didn't.
So this photo, this was like, our happiest moment, seeing our son finish his high school, get good IB grades and so on. And there we were celebrating that, and 2 weeks later, we were arrested and thrown into jail.
Not all televised confessions involve critics of the Chinese government. Peter Humphrey and his wife ran a risk consultancy in Shanghai. In 2013, they were asked by pharmaceutical giant GlaxoSmithKline, or GSK, to conduct background checks on an employee. That same year, as authorities intensified a corruption probe into the drugs company, Humphrey and his wife were also arrested.
People were being arrested left, right and centre. I think they detained more than 40 people. Shortly after those raids began, GSK informed me that the person we had investigated for them was coming after us.
犯罪嫌疑人皮特，英国籍。
Weeks after his arrest, Humphrey appeared on Chinese state television. He's never gotten over the experience.
When they paraded me in front of the cameras for the first time in August of 2013, I had been held in conditions of great duress for virtually 2 months, almost 2 months.
Humphrey says he was given a sedative just before the so-called interview, then led into a cage and strapped into a chair.
我们获取个人信息，有时候是以非法的方法去获取的。
I was very drowsy, but I was still trying to resist saying anything that would amount to confessing to a crime that I had never committed. But, you know, psychologically, what do you do when you're locked up as a caged animal in handcuffs, in a locked chair, in a locked cage, you know, even though you've never been convicted of a crime?
Humphrey and his wife spent nearly 2 years in prison after a court convicted them of illegally acquiring information. He developed cancer during his time behind bars and suffers from PTSD. But he's recovering and he still wants justice. Today, we're in Chiswick, London, looking for the new European headquarters of CGTN, the international arm of Chinese state broadcaster CCTV. We find the right building, but it's hard for Humphrey to be here for long.
But I tell you, when I'm doing something like this, I think any moment, I think someone's going to come and grab us.
Even here in the UK, you think that?
It's just the recurring nightmare from what I went through. You know, I stand here in my own country, breathing free air, fresh air, and, you know, I'm supposed to be free, but I still live this nightmare of what they did to me, and I'm standing outside, you know, a building which is soon going to be occupied by an organisation that assisted the police in doing that to me. This is the completed form.
The two Peters are joining forces.
You see the last page for the appendix list? Just make sure.
Backed by Darlin's NGO, Safeguard Defenders, Humphrey is lodging a complaint against CGTN and CCTV.
So have you got everything?
Yeah.
I have here a complaint to Ofcom, the British broadcasting regulator. I'm going to visit their office and hand it in this morning. I'm feeling a little bit nervous because this is a very emotional moment for me, to actually launch what I think is a significant complaint, a significant milestone on my efforts to win exoneration.
In his complaint, Humphrey accuses CCTV of working in active collaboration with the police and the Chinese state. His confessions, he says, were procured under conditions tantamount to torture. He concludes CCTV and CGTN should be denied licenses to broadcast in the UK for violating Ofcom's rules. Neither CCTV nor CGTN responded to our request for comment. But this is the Chinese government's reaction to Humphrey's complaint.
我们希望英方能够为外国的新闻媒体在英国开展正常的新闻报道工作提供支持和便利。我想新闻机构是促进各国人民相互理解和友好交流的桥梁和纽带。
In a written statement to 101 East, Chinese authorities also stated, China is a country ruled by law. The British citizen Peter Humphrey already pleaded guilty and showed repentance when he served the sentence, and he was released on June the 9th, 2015. Lam Wing-ki, Peter Darlin and Angela Gui have also filed complaints to Ofcom.
我當時被認罪嘅強迫拍視頻嗰個經歷，我係要寫翻個過程俾翻佢知。起碼譬如央視正電台喺英國係有可能被取消資格嘅。呢個我都希望可以做得到。
He's lost his bookstore and his livelihood and says he still receives occasional threats. But Lam says it's worth the risk to draw attention to China's forced confessions.